Hey, this is Danny from Scare Talk. Before we get into all the horror greatness, I gotta let you know about Anchor. Anchor is the host site that we use to record our podcast. Anchor will upload your podcast to Apple and Spotify and many other listening platforms. Anchor is completely free, and you can download the app or go to the website, anchor.fm, and you can record straight on there. There's also some cool editing tools that you can use. Did I mention that it's free? Yeah, so if you want to make a podcast, Anchor is the way to go. Go check it out. Now, for the spooky stuff.
Welcome to Scare Talk, a horror movie podcast for horror fans. This podcast will cover horror movie reviews, ratings, and rankings. Now for your hosts, Danny and Joel.
All right. This is Scare Talk. I am Danny, and I'm here with Justice, Joel.
Hey guys, what's up?
And today we have a couple of guests from Sacramento. We have Kiri and Jason, the Sactown Movie Buffs.
That's right.
So, Kiri, why don't you introduce yourself so we know whose voices is who?
Yeah, not a problem. So it's actually Kier. It's Kier,
sorry.
It's all everybody messes it up. It's a tough one. Obviously Jason will give his part, but we're both part of Sactown Movie Buffs. We're best friends for like the last 25 plus years, and we kind of just do our own podcasts in terms of we do a video as well as an audio podcast, and we review pretty much everything, not just horror specifically. Jason's a big time horror guy. I like horror as well, but he's a little bit more into horror than I am. I'm more of an action junkie, but we both just like films in general, so we just like discussing films, debating films, and just kind of going from there. So
cool. Yep, same here. We've been friends for 13 years.
Yeah, I think we used to work together at Hollywood Video, dating ourselves there. Back in 2008.
Yeah. 2008.
2008, I think is when we. Yeah, so we've known each other. We were roommates for a few years too. So, for 12 years.
Yeah,
14 years.
13, 14, whatever.
14.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, and we got Jason too.
Yes, yeah. Like here said, we go back to high school in the. I don't want to get into age or anything here, but the high school for us was the mid '90s, so it's been a while.
All right.
But I have, I've loved movies ever since I was a little bitty kid, and. For me, I love all genres of movies, but it's not even close. Horror is my thing. It's what I love about all other kinds of movies for sure. So
awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So today we're going to talk about Firestarter from 1984. As you guys probably have heard, there is a new Firestarter coming out in May. So, it looks like it's just like a readaptation of Stephen King's novel. Doesn't seem to be connected necessarily to the original movie.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I wanted to, kind of look at this one and eventually compare the two once the new one comes out and see what it looks like. So, okay, Joel. Sure. Well, actually, before we get too far into it, you guys are from Sacramento. Same with me and Joel. Joel abandoned the city last year.
Not just the city, I abandoned the state.
Yeah, he's over in Idaho now.
I'm in good old Idaho right now.
Yeah. Did you guys grow up in Sacramento?
No. No, we didn't grow up in Sacramento. Both of us have military backgrounds. I've lived probably a few more places than Jason has, and he can tell you about his background. But me, I've lived all over. I was born initially in Southern California. My parents were both in the Air Force, so I've lived everywhere. I think I told you guys before the show, I lived in Nebraska, I've lived in Florida, I've lived in Germany, I've lived in Japan. So I'm really from everywhere and nowhere. So basically how Jason and I essentially met is I actually moved back to California when I was 16 and up north, actually, in Yuba City. Is where I lived. And then my parents were stationed at the Air Force Base, which is Beale. So I went to Wheatland High School, which is up in Wheatland. So both of them are about 45 minutes north of here. And that's where I met Jason. We're in the same high school together. So
okay. And are you guys in Sacramento now, or are you kind of on the outskirts over in the Wheatland area?
I'm in Sacramento.
No, I live downtown.
Okay. Cool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I lived down there for a little while.
I like it. It's got its problems, but I like it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I live more in the burbs part of off of Highway 50 and Watt and a neighborhood. So
yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm over in the Carmichael area, so kind of close.
Okay.
To
yeah, not too far from where I'm at then.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So awesome. So let's get into the movie. Joel, can you tell us who's a part of this one?
Yes, I can. So this one stars Drew Barrymore, little Drew Barrymore. She was in E.T., Cat's Eye, which was another Stephen King novel. She was in Donnie Darko. And most recently, she was actually the voice of the principal in Scream 2022.
I did hear about
She was,
I know that.
Yeah. I think there was a few original cast members that lent their voices to the new one, which is pretty cool. David Keith, he's Andy. He is the dad. He was in The Indian in the Cupboard.
Yeah.
An Officer and a Gentleman, and Major League 2.
All right.
And then we've got Martin Sheen, another veteran actor here. He was in Apocalypse Now, Spawn, The Departed, and The West Wing. 155 episodes of The West Wing. I think he was the president in that show.
Yeah.
It was written by Stanley Mann. He wrote Damien, Omen 2, Conan the Destroyer, and Meteor. like an end of days kind of movie there. And this was directed by Mark L. Lester. He directed Commando, Armed and Dangerous, and Showdown in Little Tokyo.
Okay. So you said Conan the Destroyer?
Yeah,
for the writer?
The Destroyer. It's like the sequel to Conan the Barbarian.
Okay.
Also had Arnold in it. So.
Oh, okay. I don't think I heard of that one.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So this one, synopsis. A couple who participated in a potent medical experiment gain telepathic ability and then have a child who is pyrokinetic. That's the first time, this movie is the first time I've ever heard of the term pyrokinetic. So, I don't know about you guys, but that's kind of new for me. I mean, I knew about this movie, I knew what it was about, but I don't know about that term. I think that might be a made-up term for the movie.
Might be.
It's very possible. Yeah, I'm not for sure. I know I've heard that term before, but I don't know that I've heard it specifically related to Firestarter. Yeah. So for sure.
Okay, so this was the first time that I had seen this movie, which I just watched it a couple of days ago. Kiera and Jason, had you guys watched this in the past?
Yeah. I've seen.
I saw it as a kid. Okay. So really
same here.
Cool. I always heard about it. Heard about Drew Barrymore's in it as a kid. I never really cared to watch it just because the plot didn't really interest me that much. But the new one looks kind of cool, so thought we'd give it a shot. Joel, this was your first time, you said?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Same with me, working at Hollywood Video for a few years, you always see the cover of it, but we just never there's always a lot other movies to choose from besides
Yep.
some random 80s movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed E.T. I like Drew Barrymore as like a young actress. Like she was pretty talented back in the day. But I don't know, something about it just never really appealed to me to see it. But yeah, so it's because of this new one that we decided to do an episode on this one.
Right.
And so,
Sure.
got us to watch it. So,
okay, so Kier, what was your, do you remember back when you were a kid watching this, if you liked it, or kind of what?
Yeah,
what
I remember liking it as a kid. I did revisit again, I don't know, maybe in my teens or early 20s. But as a kid, I pretty much loved almost anything, you know what I mean? So, going back to my background a little bit, like I said, I spent a lot of time overseas. And when I lived overseas, we didn't have cable or really we had like one channel usually when you lived overseas at that time. So our thing was to rent movies a lot of times when we lived overseas. And that's kind of how I got into love for movies in general. But I loved almost everything as a kid, and this one I remember really, really liking as a kid, and then revisiting it, in my late teens, early 20s, and it definitely feels dated, when you watch it then. The special effects, aren't as up to snuff as, because it's years later. And the pacing is just a little bit slower than I remembered it being as a kid as well. So it was never one of my favorite Stephen King movies, or even my favorite Drew Barrymore movies in general as a kid actress. I actually probably like Cat's Eye a little bit more, to be honest with you. So
okay, all right. What about you, Jason? When you watched it as a kid and currently?
Yeah, kind of the same thing. Like I loved it when I was a kid. It was like, in fact, rewatching it for this show, I was reminded like how certain scenes were just kind of burned into my brain, like some of those early movies that really influence you. And I remember it's one of the very first movies that I was really like emotionally invested in. It came out when I was 6. You know what I mean? So, and I remember certain scenes like it was yesterday, just like being like really worried about Drew Barrymore and her dad, as a kid. So I loved it when I was a kid, and I kind of like Kier. I revisited it again when I was, an adult or a younger adult, and it didn't really work for me as much anymore. And, I don't know if we're jumping ahead by saying this, but now I like it again. I don't know what that's about, but I really enjoyed watching it again for the first time in probably 15, 20 years yesterday.
All right.
Nice.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
I unfortunately did not have time to rewatch it again, so I don't know if my feelings would have changed if I saw it again yesterday. So, but what I will say about Jason, he's probably more inclined to watch a movie years later and then that he didn't necessarily love and then like it again. I don't know that if I still think it was dated if I saw it again today. I'm not, but who knows? Who knows? Maybe I'll watch it again someday and I'll be like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah.
But probably not.
All right, cool. Well, some things, like I said, I just watched it recently. Some things that really stood out to me is the score. I really love the music in it.
Yes.
It's very 80s.
Yeah, it's very 80s.
Tangerine Dream.
I had to look at who did the music, because I was like, this has to be John Carpenter. It sounds a lot like a film he would have done the music for, but it was not him. I can't remember who it was, but it was not him.
It was Tangerine Dream. It was shown like in the very beginning of the movie. It said like score by and then Tangerine Dream.
Oh, gotcha.
At the bottom,
okay.
But yeah. So they really wanted you to know who it was.
Well,
he had to differentiate himself from John Carpenter to let you know.
Yeah,
he was so big.
Oh no, I mean they did a lot of really good scores for movies. They did like the score for Risky Business. They did the score for The Keep. Okay. Which is a really kind of under the radar Michael Mann movie. That's they do great electronic scores.
Nice.
Yeah.
So did you guys enjoy the score as well? It sounds like you did.
Yeah. I do remember the score being pretty good, and I do remember that it. The thing about the 80s and around that time period, a lot of the horror films, a lot of the films in general had that same that sound, that 80s type sound to it, which is very distinctive whenever you're watching like a horror movie or even an action movie or something of that nature. Yeah. So, so I always do love those old school, like 80s kind of like eerie kind of sounds that they had in the film for sure.
Right.
Synthesizers.
Yeah,
synthesizers all day long. Yeah, for sure. Yep. But that was also big in all the popular music at that time as well. So,
yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
What do you think, Joel?
So I'm not a huge like 80s fan, 80s like horror. I'm not a big like Jason fan, like slash and all that. It's just kind of cheesy and campy, but and also like bad acting for the most part too. But I didn't get that at all from this movie. I didn't think it was that campy at all. And the acting was actually like good for an 80s horror movie. I thought that the relationship between Drew Barrymore and her dad was a little weird in the beginning of the movie. It's just there is a line that I wrote down because I wanted to remember it that he said to her at one point, and they're running in the beginning of the movie, running from the shop,
right.
And at one point he goes, "I'm crazy about you," and she goes, "I'm crazy about you too." And I was just like, that's kind of weird.
I do remember.
Most people say "I love you" to like their daughter, and "I'm crazy about you" sounds a little.
I'm mad weird. About you. I'm mad about you too. It's like, yeah, no, it does. It does sound a little closer than you would want for a daughter father's relationship, I guess.
She's like 8 or something. Like she's
she's not even 8. I don't even think she's 8 in this movie.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so I mean, some of it was a little strange to me, and also it is a little dated as well. Her shooting fireballs all of a sudden at the end of the movie was a little strange. Like usually things just catch on fire when she's concentrating, but then she's like shooting fireballs at the end of it, and it's like, okay, well.
It's because she reached full power.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, her dad was killed, and so...
Yeah. Which, I mean, was he, like... He was shot in the arm.
Yeah.
I noticed that, too.
It wasn't really a...
Yeah.
It's like a shoulder shot,
Yeah. It's like, all right.
In the 80s, that's all it took, They didn't have the medicine they had today. You get shot in the arm, it's a wrap for you.
So fun. I was looking up some facts about the movie, and something that I read is actually everything was practical effects. So
yeah, it was the 80s. They didn't have CGI really back then, so everything almost had to be practical effects back in the early 80s. So
it's kind of crazy about that fireball thing, then.
Yeah, they're
like a practical fireball.
Shooting
real dangerous.
Yeah.
We've done shows in the past about how much because we have a love for 80s horror because that's pretty much everything was practical effects back then for 80s horror. Because they didn't have CGI. Their computers weren't like what they are today. So it was just you had to do everything practically back then. So most of all of my favorite horror films are all practical effects. So.
And I do appreciate that for the 80s. Like, I do love the practical effects of the 80s and stuff. And I really wish that they would, kind of bring that back to today. I know CGI is cheaper.
It's cheaper. That's why. I mean, it's just so much easier to do because, you got to figure like how much movies go for today. I mean, the budgets are ridiculously over $100 million for a horror movie today because of the star power that you have in it and their commanding power. It's just so much easier just to do the CGI on a computer, do it that way or have a bunch of characters in front of a green screen and do it that way. It's just so much easier to do it that way. And that's kind of why a lot of, directors have opted to do that just because of cost. But there's just something to be said about, the directors that still like practical effects, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. It takes more work to actually build something,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. It's just kind of like, I mean, in today's, whole social media and everything like that, it's very, the majority of people that are talking about that kind of thing are talking about how much they don't like CGI in their horror movies. So you would think that, directors and stuff would kind of, I think that they'd get more people watching their movies if they were using practical effects as opposed to CGI and, special effects and all that. It's just, I don't know.
I think the horror purists would care about that more. But I don't know what group they fall
population.
into in terms of the overall broad spectrum of people that go to movie theaters today. And Jason and I have had these conversations back and forth over the years about where things are going and where things are headed in terms of just movie making today. And not only is it cheaper, but it's just, I don't think that your average movie goer today really cares unless they're really, really into horror, and they're really into like older horror from like the 80s and early 90s. The younger generation from 2000s and up, they're, unless they have a love for old school horror, they kind of grew up seeing CGI for the most part. And so those moviegoers, they're not going to appreciate it the same way that somebody that grew up in the 80s or 90s watching the older horror with practical effects. I just think we have a different level of appreciation for it than a lot of the people. Not everybody, but I'm just saying there's a lot of people today, that I know that are in their early 20s that don't really care. They don't care whether it's, so.
Yeah. That's a good point. I think they won't change over to practical effects unless it's a low budget and they're kind of doing it guerrilla style, or they lose money. Like a big production movie loses money, and they don't get the audience, they don't get the people in the theater. Then maybe they'll go back to the drawing board and be like, okay, maybe we need to spend a little more to make a little more. But if the general population, the general audience is still going to go see it, then they might as well cut corners and cut costs, which sucks. But
and in my opinion, CGI is actually getting better.
It is.
So it is getting, in some cases, harder to tell. It used to be like so obvious, like even like the late 90s, early 2000s when they would use CGI in a film, I could tell immediately. And now, I still can tell, and a lot of times I just know because of the movie itself, I can tell just because of the I know that like, any Avenger movie or something like that, it's just a bunch of dudes running around on a green screen. It's so obvious, but there's certain scenes, that you can still get away with it sometimes nowadays because it looks so good and it looks so clean that it is kind of hard to tell. And it's just, it's hard to make a giant dinosaur or dinosaurs running at you, you know what I mean? Like, and look realistic, and still keep your budget under $300 million for the next Jurassic Park movie. You know what I mean? It's just kind of hard to do that. So I kind of fault it, but I also go into it with, like, how would they do that today? How would you be able to have 50 dinosaur stampedes running after a group of actors, you know what I mean? And make it look real.
Yeah.
I just think you have a tough time doing that today.
Yeah, I don't hate CGI. You know what I mean? Like, I'm always going to prefer practical effects, but I do understand that there are some things that you can only do that way, and people shouldn't limit their imaginations to not do it. But I think the best cases are where it's kind of a really well done mixture of both, which we are seeing. Like I while we were talking, I just happened to Google recent horror films with practical effects. And like, there are some ones here, like the, like Krampus, like Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, the Evil Dead remake, where it's kind of a mixture. There was a lot of practical effects, but they kind of complement them with some CG around the edges. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I like that there are some filmmakers that still insist on at least doing partially practical effects, but maybe, adding to it with CGI here and there.
Right.
Yeah. And then you also have to keep in mind, a lot of these, especially the bigger horror films, the studios, the producers of these films, you're on a budget with them. You know what I mean? They're going to say you have X amount to do this film. And, you start looking at cost, even if you want to do the practical effects, they're going to probably be like, well, that's going to take you over cost. You can save couple $100,000 right here just doing a CGI effect. You know what I mean? And as a director, you're probably just going to say, okay, we'll just save the money in order to do this. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And it takes less time too.
Yeah, and it takes a lot less time, and you can do it. You don't have to do it while they're filming it. All you have to do is just film a character running and screaming, and then, you just, have some computer wizard in the background after the movie's been shot, and he can go back in and edit in whatever you want him to have, Sure. So it's just so much easier, it's harder for an actor, I would imagine, just to be replying to something that you don't even necessarily really see, so, right. But yeah.
Yeah, it takes talent on the actor's part there to to really like be affected by something that they can't even see, like a green screen kind of thing. Like it's but yeah, I do like CGI. It's just in like action movies and stuff, that's fine. Like like you're talking about the Marvel movies. I just prefer in horror to kind of stick with practical. But as far as horror goes, that's like the one genre that basically gets the least amount of people going to their movies. You can get like a Marvel, you can get a bunch of people going to like a summer blockbuster, but it is harder to get people to go see horror. And a lot of the times it's because they're rated R, and that limits people right there. And so you kind of do have to cut corners, cut costs and stuff to make it so that you can actually make a profit off of it.
Right.
But,
Yeah. And it's hard in general to make a profit these days. And Jason had this conversation before, in terms of, I think I think Jason brought this up, but something like, any new, like last year, for example, every single new movie that came out that didn't have like already there wasn't a sequel that already had like a built-in audience pretty much bombed. So I mean, if you're a producer and you know this, you know what I mean? Why are you going to take a risk on a bunch of practical effects on a new horror film, and that, costs are already, and then the chances you're going to get your return on that investment are kind of slim at this point. So, I don't see it going in the other direction where more people are going to do practical effects. I see it going to just more CGI, in my opinion. So,
yeah.
I agree. I think, these days, the only movies that I've seen, horror movies with practical effects that are new, are more of the like super low budget. So they can't even afford CGI, and they're kind of the directors are kind of doing the practical effects, And so, and then obviously those people are, going to be more of the horror purists and all that. So sometimes they're going to take pride in that kind of work. But so let's get back to the movie. So
kind of went on a tangent there.
Yeah.
So yes, there is practical effects in the movie. All of it is practical, which is pretty cool. A lot of the explosions, and all the fire and all that. So Joel, you said you kind of liked Drew Barrymore in it. You thought she was good. I didn't think she was good.
You didn't?
No. I don't know. She's cute. She's a cute little actress, and I don't think she did anything great though. I didn't see any like, oh man, that was amazing.
Well, I mean, yeah, she's not going to win any Oscars for this performance, but I mean, it's when it was just, some of the shots around her were just like really cool looking, like the whole whenever she would like really concentrate on something and something would go up in flames, you'd see like flames either in front of her face or in the background of her, and it's just some of the shots were really cool. And when she's really like focusing and concentrating on something, like I don't know, it was just she's not like she wasn't the greatest actress in the world back in the day, but I mean, for being 6 years old when this movie came out, roughly, I think she did a decent job in it. So
some of those shots, I agree, were cool. With the fire and her concentrating and her hair kind of flying back in the wind and all that.
Yeah.
But then when she would talk, when she had lines, I don't know. I didn't really care for it. Jason, you said you really liked it this time around. What'd you think of Drew Barrymore?
Yeah, I mean, like I like Drew Barrymore. I grew up on E.T. and this and Cat's Eye, like Kier said, and so yeah, I mean, it's part of it. I think is it's a different style of acting for kids back then. I mean, primarily she was cute, and the line readings are kind of, oh, I don't know, Daddy. I mean, just kind of very a little. It's a different style of acting than I think kids do these days. But it's not gonna
the script. Yeah, the script. You also have to,
It's I mean, it's a little. self-conscious, a little awkward, but I just like her, so I just kind of go with it, I guess. And also, I did find the father-daughter bond between her and David Keith. I know we already mentioned that maybe it pushes it a little bit in some areas, but I did find that a very affecting. It felt real. It felt like they really did like and love each other. You know what I mean? So I bought that bond, so that kind of carried it through for me.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole connection with the father-daughter was definitely one of the strong points of the movie for me as well. So, Kier, do you remember Drew Barrymore? What'd you think of her?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think there, like I said, it's been a while since I've seen this one, but I didn't think there was anything inherently bad about her acting. I don't think, but to be honest with you, even as an adult, I don't think she's that amazing of an actress. Sure. She's not going to win any Academy Awards even as an adult. So I wouldn't necessarily think that even as a child, she was even in A.T., which, I've seen more recently, or even Cat's Eye, which I've seen more recently, which were all done within, 4 years of each other or something. They're all done relatively soon, so so you have a little barometer. I think E.T. was actually before this, and then I think after this, then she made, I believe, Cat's Eye, if I'm not mistaken. I think so. But yeah, so that was all within the same window. So I mean, so I have 3 different opportunities to view her acting. I wouldn't necessarily say she's an amazing actress, but it's serviceable. And like Jason alluded to or said, that back in the 80s, kids, like I said, they gave them bad lines. You know what I mean? Like some of the lines you also have to look at the script. If you look at the lines that they gave you, I mean, they're not giving you a whole lot to work with in some of those situations either. So,
this is written by the
all
guy
the lines
that
are
did Omen 2. So.
All the lines are and then the movie is a little cheesy overall. You know what I mean? There's certain elements of the movie that makes it cheesy. So some of the dialogue is cheesy, not just by her, but by some of the other players as well. So there is a little level of cheesy dialogue in the film, and that was just the 80s, and you just kind of dealt with it. Yeah. If you watched this, if you were, when this first came out, you might not even have noticed, but obviously as an adult watching it, we're gonna be more critical and more, notice that the acting may have not been that great, or whatever the case may be now. So
yeah, no, that's a good point with the dialogue, just the writing in general. Because I think back to some of the scenes with her, and it was just, I don't know if she could have done a better job acting with what she was given, just whatever she said was just corny in general. So, that's a good point too. All right. So anything else you guys liked or, didn't like about the movie?
Well, I really like George C. Scott as the villain. What is his name? Nightwing or something like that. And I know it's been kind of viewed as controversial because he was, George C. Scott is not Native American, and yet he's cast as a character who's Native American. But I hear that, but when I watch this movie, he's so insane. You know what I mean? He's so evil and insane that I almost view him not it's a non-Native American actor cast in a Native American role. I view him as someone who is pretending to be something that he's not because he's so crazy. You know what I mean? He just thought it would be cool to have this name and have a ponytail. And that's just part of his insanity because he's so evil and insane. And I think it's a really, really entertaining performance. I mean, you really hate him. Yeah. So it works.
Right.
Yeah. And then also, again, going back to that time period of filmmaking, that was pretty common to have a white actor play a character that wasn't of their natural background.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't uncommon to see, a white person play a Native American or, a Hispanic person or, back in those days.
Yeah.
So
true.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rainbird.
Rainbird. Yeah. Nightwing, Rainbird, something.
Birds, wings,
some animal related.
Yeah.
He was pretty good.
I remember him being pretty creepy.
Yeah.
So,
And he was pretending to be a custodian, janitor type of guy.
Yeah.
building her trust and stuff. That was super creepy. I was like, man, this guy's like, I don't know. It's kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I think, I haven't read the book. I've read some Stephen King novels, but not this one. I think in the book, it's more kind of a, like he has a little bit of a pedophile kind of interest in her. And I think they just barely touch on that here when he touches her knee at one point. Yeah. And I also like his chosen method of killing somebody, which is just like a karate chop to the middle of their face so that it like collapses their skull, which I think is kind of cool in a like evil kind of way.
What do you think, Joel, overall?
I liked his character. It was, he did a good job of being just like kind of a creepy character trying to get on the good side of the 6-year-old and trying to, he did a good job with it for sure. And, I don't really have anything negative. When you were saying that he was like Native American, he didn't really seem like he was that way to me at all. I don't know. He just seemed like, I don't know if I like missed that part of the movie. But yeah, he didn't appear to be even trying to be Native American to me. I don't know, he was just like some white guy that was
weird.
But yeah, really weird.
They're subtle. It's subtle, and I haven't read the book, but I'm pretty sure the character in the book is. So some people think it's like poor decision to cast him, but I think he does a good job.
Yeah, he does. For sure.
All right. So the ending. So we kind of talked about it, where she's just blowing everything up. Everything's on fire. Yeah. Everybody's on fire. Definitely one of my favorite parts of the movie. She kind of turns into like Mario when he gets like the flower, like he's cooking, like shooting the fireballs and stuff.
Shooting fireballs at him.
Did you guys like
evil
the
Mario
climax? Or was it satisfying? What'd you think?
I think she was just like enraged. Yeah, I mean, she was just enraged at the end and just went crazy. So yeah, definitely. I definitely remember the ending with the fireballs all of a sudden. Like you said, she used to just like make things spontaneously combust before that. Then started just like actually like shooting fireballs. So yeah, I mean, but like you said, she reached full potential, so.
Yeah.
Going back
get
to
on her bad side.
Yeah, no. I guess going back to like the last dragon, she finally got the glow. You know what I mean? She finally got the she finally got the whatever she needed. Finally, came through. With the seeing her father get hurt. So.
Yeah.
It made me think that it made me want like a comeback for these kinds of movies, because they went through like quite a run there for a little while with starting with Carrie and then The Fury and then Scanners, which I had to watch immediately after finishing this because it made me want to watch Scanners. But like I wish there'd be a comeback of these kind of telekinesis horror movies where people are making like goofy expressions and making people explode or burst into flames, because we had kind of a surprise reappearance of that with Looper. I didn't expect that in Looper, but like we need more movies like that, because it made me realize I kind of miss those movies where people make funny faces and make people blow up.
Yeah, the subgenre of the funny faces and the explosions.
Yeah.
Funny face explosion.
Yeah, exactly.
There was one of the Friday the 13th, I want to say, I can't remember which one, New Blood or something like that.
Part 7.
Yeah, had some of that in there too.
Yep.
All right, so there is some more fun facts about this. So George C. Scott, he had the eye patch in a portion of the film because he actually did have like an eye infection in real life. So it kind of added to the character, but it was also like necessary for him.
Native American pirate.
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of a cool little fact.
Yeah, because he doesn't have it throughout the whole movie, right?
No. No,
I don't think he does.
no, it's like parts. I think it's more toward the end when.
It works though. It works for his character.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's like
Makes him look even more evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also we were talking about John Carpenter. I kind of brought him up, but he was originally going to be the director for this one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
This would have been interesting if he directed this movie.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He was casted as the director when he was doing The Thing.
Okay.
And then because of the critical reception to The Thing, they dropped him.
Yeah.
Because he did a good job with the thing.
I know.
No, because it wasn't a.
Yeah, critical. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's one thing that will never ever make sense to me is that how much people hated The Thing when it came out, because I watch it now and it's like it's a perfect movie. How did anybody never not like this movie?
Yeah.
It was ahead of its time.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like a classic now, obviously.
Yeah.
But but back then, but that's usually the case with a lot of films. A lot of films when they first came out, people just don't get it or whatever, didn't care for it, and then years down the road, now it's like a horror classic. So
They dropped John Carpenter for the Conan the Destroyer director. All right.
well, I'm sure Conan was that was probably a pretty modest hit back then.
Sure,
Conan he had an Arnold
Yeah.
Schwarzenegger right when he was coming into his own. So back then, I'm sure that was like the hot new director that they probably wanted to get for this. So
Totally back then. I could see it. Also, something interesting is back when the book was out on like paperback, Drew Barrymore's mom had just made kind of a comment to her that she looked like the girl on the cover. When they saw the book, before she was casted, before she was, even thought of for the role, it was just kind of something that I guess Drew Barrymore had said later on after that her mom had said she actually looked like the character on the book. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Nice. They based on that little girl from E.T.
Yeah, there you go.
That one was 2 years prior.
Right. Actually, the book was written, I think it said 4 years before the movie came out. So
okay,
the
so
book was out for a little while.
2 years before E.T. came out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, did you guys have anything else you wanted to add, or then we can get into the rating?
Not for me. I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think we covered pretty much everything for this movie.
All right. So we'll start with Jason. What are you going to give this one?
Okay, so you said it's like a Rotten Tomato score, so like a percentage.
Yes, out of 100.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then I'm gonna say 80%.
Okay, nice. Yeah, you like this one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are you excited for the new one? Are you going to see it?
I am. I know this is a larger topic, but remakes, especially in the horror community, are it's a divisive idea. But I personally have always been not necessarily in favor of remakes, but I've never dismissed a remake without giving it a chance, because there have been a lot of really good ones. Like The Thing we were just talking about. That's a remake.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So I am always open to giving a remake a chance. So, if but I don't see every remake. I'll see, the trailer looks okay.
Yeah.
The trailer didn't blow me away, but I've seen a lot of trailers that didn't blow me away, and then the movie did. So I'll just, I'm a horror fan, so I see just about every horror movie that comes out. So yeah, I'm going to see it. I mean, who am I kidding?
there are like scenes and lines from that trailer taken straight from the movie, from this movie.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. That I noticed when I was watching this one. I was like, okay. That scene looked like the trailer for the new one coming out.
Right. I noticed that too. But then it looks like there's going to be some changes too. I think it looks like the mother character is going to be in it more.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she was already in it more in the trailer than Heather Locklear was in the whole movie.
Yeah, like a combined 6 minutes maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
In the original.
Yeah.
All right, Kier.
If that.
What do you think on this on this original? What are you going to rate it?
Yeah, I'm always usually, unfortunately, a little lower than Jason is. I'm probably going to, just off of my recent memory of seeing it, I'm probably going to go with maybe a 70%, to be fair.
Okay.
I'd have to re-see it again, but yeah, probably 70%, because I do remember liking it. I didn't love it, but I do remember liking it. Like I said, it's definitely not the best Stephen King adaptation from the 80s, and it's probably not even the best Drew Barrymore film from the 80s. You know what I mean? So, so I like it, but it's, and it's one of those films for me that is being remade that I don't have any qualms with, because I know Jason doesn't have an issue with. I do sometimes why are they remaking this? This was fine on its own. You know what I mean? Why does this need to be remade? But this was one of those ones that I'd be hard pressed to find too many people that are like, oh my God, why are they remaking the Firestarter? That movie was such a classic. You know what I mean? So I think you'd be hard pressed to find too many people that would be too crazy about them making a remake to, an average horror film from 1984 or whatever it was, So, so I don't have any qualms about this particular one. And I'm a little more, certain films, I prefer them just to leave it alone. If I really loved it, sometimes I just prefer them just to leave it alone, because I feel like if it sucks, it kind of drags down the original in some kind of way. You know what I mean? It's just so I don't know. So it's like when you watch a really, really good movie and then they make a sequel and the sequel's just terrible. You know what I mean? You still love the sequel. I mean, the original, obviously, but it just kind of just cheapens it a little bit that they made this really terrible, sequel. So I kind of feel like the same way about when they remake something and it turns out to be just complete rubbish. So.
Right. Yeah. Right. So you said, there probably isn't people that are really upset that there's a remake. But I wonder who was asking for a remake, because
that's the other thing. It had to be somebody that was like, yeah, I think I could have did a better job on that Firestarter.
That's so random to me.
And it's random, but those are the ones that kind of need a remake, need a resurgence, remind people that this movie actually did exist back in the 80s, because at this point, if, like I was saying earlier, if the new one wasn't coming out, me and Danny probably wouldn't have watched this movie. It's just, maybe it gets people to watch the original ones for the remake, and
Yeah, and I don't know if kids today will have known of the original Firestarter necessarily, but if you grew up during that time, back in the 80s or whatever case may be, I think it was a moderate hit. So I don't know I don't think it bombed. I think that, pretty much everybody that I know that is of my age has seen it at the very least, so.
It was a hit with all the other 6-year-olds, I can tell you that.
Yeah, all the other 6-year-olds loved it. We all loved it. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I definitely don't see there being a lot of purists out there that are like, don't do this to Firestarter. That movie was,
I'm sure there are some.
Hashtag
I'm sure. You can find that for anything. Yeah, you can probably find that for any film now. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think that this one is one of the ones where I'm surprised that there is a remake. So yeah,
she needs a cameo at least. She needs to be in it for a minute. She's still around, so
yeah, let
her have a cameo.
Yeah.
All right, Joel, what are you giving this one?
I'm going to give this one an 83.
Damn.
I enjoyed it.
Nice.
I thought it, it's not, obviously it's not a classic or anything, but it's, for what it is, I thought it was pretty good, pretty decent. So,
nice. I'm going 67.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I thought it was okay.
Ouch.
Not
you hate it.
It's fresh. It's fresh.
Yeah.
It's low fresh.
It's a little bit. Yeah.
It's not enough. It's a D.
Probably not something I'll watch again. Honestly, I thought it was okay, passable, but it was all right, so thanks for coming onto the show.
Absolutely.
You guys should go check out their YouTube, their podcast. You can find it on Apple and Spotify and some of those other ones that are out there. Sactown Movie Buffs, fellow Sacramento dudes. They do a good job.
Yep.
So Go check them out. And then,
Except for people who moved to Idaho anyway.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the black sheep of this group here.
All right, yeah, so go look out for the new film, Firestarter, from this year. It comes out in May. We'll be doing a review on that one as well, coming up in a few months here. But yeah, that's it. So, this has been Scare Talk.
Sleep tight.
Don't let Drew bite.